Greetings to dear friends, guests, subscribers to my channel, to Alexei's channel. We are streaming it live at the end of September. October is almost here, and we're discussing another day of war. I got a ton of different statements from different notable newsmakers. So Alexei is with us. Good evening. Good evening. All right, friends, before starting, let's start. Talk a little bit about the format of this channel. Both of our channels are sanctioned in Ukraine's, mine and Alexei's, and our viewers are specific group who actually have character and backbone to find us and to still listen to us. So if you can, click the like button, and if you can tell your friends who live in Ukraine or Russia, change the country of your residence in YouTube, and then you can watch these things. So QR code that you see next to me, you can scan to ask a question into the stream. This is a different service, providing QR code today. The old one still works, but we're using a different one. I also have Telegram channel, and you can find me there, Oleksandr Shelest. QR code next to Alexei is QR code for his School of Communication and Thought. If you're interested, come, join, take classes. Of course, everybody is invited to learn more about yourself. And do not forget to click like, subscribe, and if you can, post something under the stream so we can get more eyeballs on it. So today's question is why drafting commission is backing up already served men, or the ones who were deemed unfit for service. Because we do have several cases when apparently the drafting commission grabs these people from the street and suddenly they become proper to serve in the army again and get sent to the trenches, to the front line. So options to answer. A, this is done to save money. B, they're preventing the rebellion of the veterans, because who else can be upset? Probably those who come back from the front. Third is huge deficit of skilled fighters on the front. And one last, they're just filling the plan. You do not need to look for any conspiracy theories. They just find a warm male body, packaged it, and sent over. Alexei, what would you answer to this question? I think it is option number 4. They're just grabbing everybody they can find. And to verify whether he fought, whether he has special documents and all that, there's no time for that, right? They need to grab this body, make it unconscious or not resisting, shove in the bus, and then after that, good luck trying to get out of the system. Some people know how much does it cost in Ukraine to bribe yourself out of the system, but it's a lot of money. I'm of an opinion some people probably should wear certain stars or insignia, or I don't know, put a medical document with adhesive on your forehead that you're unfit for duty. Well, we'll try to uncover more today whether there is any evil thinking behind their actions today, or is it just the usual over-exaggerated response of the people at the places. And police is joining these incidents, and sometimes they fight on the side of drafting commissions, sometimes against. It's just weird. And let's start with global questions. Alexei, I would like you to help us understand the silence of Kremlin. We heard Kellogg, we heard Vance, tomahawks for Ukraine. Ukraine will be winning. On the Warsaw Security Forum, Zelenskyy and Tusk made their fiery speeches. It appears that something is rather disconnected from reality on Earth. Why is it happening like this? Well, listen, such an order of statements can be inspired by two things. One thing, Trump made a decision to teach Russia a lesson if Russia doesn't want to learn. In reality, I think he made a decision to teach a lesson to China. because Zelenskyy would not be including China into his speech. He was allowed to mention China. That means that Trump is negotiating with China, means that negotiations with Russia already happened. Trump exposed that Putin did disappoint him with his reaction. So he treats Russia as a proxy power of China. And of course, there is negotiations happening on one hand, and on the other hand, there is, of course, blackmail and pressure. And it needs to, as I see, include elements of revenge to make Putin pay for his stubbornness. And very likely the transfer of arms to Ukraine is part of that. And many of them are new. What we heard in already open sources are green pins from Sweden. They talked about that back in 22, but finally they're about to come. Sybiga is already saying that you will not hide. And we can get just all the targets that we want to get. And then they also told Kremlin that you guys will also have to go to the bunker, implying that Ukraine might launch Tomahawks, right? Whether yes or not, we won't know until Ukraine uses the first Tomahawk missile. But we can understand that decision to transfer a significant amount of arms has been taken. And that's why they're all in higher spirits, saying that Ukraine is winning, if not today, then tomorrow. And we have a lot of missiles and our stashes are deep, so that's what's inspiring this factor. These statements and such enthusiasms, both on Ukrainian side and the Poland side, that can only occur when both sides see that there is a significant amount of arms getting ready to transfer or is already en route. Alexei, there is one factor that might impede this theory. The question is what Trump has to pay revenge to Putin for. For a simple thing that he refused to accept what Trump offered him. So you imply that Putin did not accept Trump's offer. Yes, evil taxi drivers that I talk to in New York sometimes, they're saying that Trump offered Putin a significant scheme with future bonuses, certain acquisitions and all, that would pay Russia, Putin well in the long term. But in return, Putin said that, Donald, I do appreciate your effort, but you will be gone in 2 years, and after that there could be another Obama or some Hillary or some other figure in your White House. So let us do another way. We will first achieve our goals militarily, and then after that we can do negotiations. And after that I can talk to you or your next president, etc., whoever is in power in states. And after that, there is also some pressure on Europe with UAVs and the like. We can talk about UAVs more, a separate element, Alexei. We can talk about them now, that's fine. Right now, Europe is forming their budgets, military budgets for next year as well. And Russia wants it to save more money for itself than transfer to Ukraine. So these are the actions that Russia is exercising on the borders with European countries to impress them however they can, that they also need some anti-drone warfare, that they need more money for their own defense. So that's what we see. Yeah, sometimes it's weird, Alexei. There is a supposedly intelligence drone that is lit like a Christmas tree. Well, that's exactly what they do, Alexander. They're sending a special drone that needs to be bright and noticed, and that's their task, is to be noticed. It probably could be singing Christmas carols as well. They're not about military operations, they're about forming public opinion. Alexei, in Italian press, they're writing that it's a Ukrainian plan and it's some Zelenskyy special operation. No, I can say that all the American taxi drivers in the capital are well aware. You know my reference, right? Not the real drivers. They're well aware that these are Russian military drones that are launching from Russian vessels and Russian territories. So, okay. Another thing that's interesting You're saying that Putin is so blunt to Trump that I don't care how long you stay in the office, you only have 2 or 3 years left, and we can fight through this time. Can it be some Jesuit but very precise plan? How do you mean, Alexander? Well, one can consider it, if it is true, through Lukashenko mirror. Unclear why Putin and Lukashenko were meeting for 5 hours. And then Alexander Grigorovich Lukashenko comes out and makes a statement about a meeting, de facto suggesting Zelenskyy to meet. And supposedly there is some scenario on the table, some offer on the table. And if you don't agree, there'll be something like Ukraine faced at the beginning of military operation. And nobody knows what the last point implies, whether they will invade from Belarus again into Ukraine territory or not, which is quite an option because Chernigov district is being demolished now. They're using rather heavy bombing that cannot be explained just by destroying some production targets there. They're minor production facilities, and they're definitely overusing the effort to grind it down in Ukraine. So it seems that Trump and Putin could have negotiated that you, Vladimir, have some time. I will pretend that I am still vouching for Ukraine. I will not supply them much. I will offer Europe to purchase some. They probably won't. And Putin probably knows that only if he manages to get closer to Kiev, he will have a chance to suppress Zelenskyy or get him to the table of negotiations. Well, even if, imagine, Alexander, that he could have told Putin that, okay, sure, you have 2 months or till spring to do whatever you want militarily, could be a trap then, because at the same time he's transferring a lot of arms to Ukraine. So that might be a setup if you look at it this way. But regarding Lukashenko, he was advisor during Anchorage meeting. He was one of the consultants regarding Putin. So I suspect, since Trump is negotiating with China, China must be asking Putin to imitate peace process. So they would have some cards to play with Trump, saying, hey, listen, we can influence Russia. He's listening to your offers, and there is a way to maybe resolve it peacefully. Zelenskyy is making some statements. Peskov is coming out. For me, it all looks like a Potemkin village, like an imitation. Trump, the main tone is that Trump is meeting with China. He already could not find a common language with Putin, so he's going to the owner of Putin in his eyes, China. And China is telling Putin, do not shit on our strawberries. We're talking about our trade deals with America, so please pace yourself. I don't think there'll be a special attack on Kiev from Russia, because to do that, they would need 150,000 troops, roughly. This is already a quarter of all troops fighting in Ukraine. I don't see them somewhere finding 150,000. Well, they can find the usual, the 18-year-olds that are drafted every year. Well, no, you cannot send them to the war. No, not in the first 3 months at least. They need to serve first time for a year at least, and then maybe sign contract. What if they do it later, a year later, after they served? Yeah, true, they could do that. They could, and they could force them to sign a contract, or they could try to scrape the ones who already served and paid their duties, so to say, to the motherland. Okay, my next question, Alexei. Do you know the formula of that brave water that Zelenskyy has drunk? Well, his behavior can be explained because Trump told him, hey, we'll give you that much money, that many tomahawks, and some other arms. And that's why he behaves like he does. Well, in Ukraine, apparently, we do not have enough money, so why? Well, there will be money. That's why Europe and the United States are both talking about giving Ukraine more funds. How do you think arms and weapons at this stage of war, can they bring to a turning point? No, they probably will not break a back of this war, but ideally they would cause Russian side to lose so much, after which it would be a good point to start talking about negotiating the way out. So it'll be basically too painful for Russia. But it dependent upon several things. First, our allies or whoever they are need to give these arms. Second, the arms need to be transferred. Third, they need to be used by trained personnel and used effectively. But, this is a complex chain of events. One thing is to transfer money. I'm sure they can transfer money. But giving arms that need to be effectively used in Ukraine, that is I'm a bit more skeptical about. But some effect they will definitely have on Russia. They probably will continue destroying the oil refineries and the command outposts. According to Americans who are coming out and saying that they are ready to replace Russian oil and gas in Europe, that I think is rather forward-linked to whatever they're doing now with Ukraine. On the other hand, Chinese and Koreans may also give Russians something. So this is a story that can have effect on both sides. Why Zelenskyy is so brave? Because he solved the problems of budget for the next year. That was a key problem of his. And he is solving a military equipment. But unsolvable problem for Ukraine remains mobilization of personnel. Because Tomahawks and equipment, this is number 2 or 3 factor. The first factor is people. And people are melting away slowly, but they are. Ukraine recruits slightly over 20,000 draftees per month. Half of them disappear, leave their locations, etc., run away, and the rate of attrition is slightly over whatever remains. And Russians, they actually managed to grow their numbers by 2,000 to 3,000 people a month, despite their attrition. So this is the main problem, that these two vectors are on different slopes. And Tomahawks and Iskanders, that's secondary matters. Alexei, 5 minutes ago we heard the conversation of Zelenskyy was posted in the media, that he talks about Dobropillya. He's saying that by the beginning of today, our troops in Dobropillya managed to liberate over 174 square kilometers from Russian diversion groups and troops. It's a very gray story about what's happening on this part of the front. Since we do touch on military matters, I would like you to comment on this direction and what's happening nearby. Nearby, Russians are advancing. So how come we clean up certain square feet and they are taking some other square feet? Yeah, that's an old story. When you take from Peter to feed Paul, we took some troops from one side to clean up the existing problem, but then we do not have enough troops to hold and support front from where we took those. At 1,000 kilometer length front, at the level of the front line being at 20 or 30% staffed, there always will be some breakthroughs. Dobropillya was the first one of them. And we found some counteroffensive troops to hold their advancement. But Russians are still exerting the pressure. So I can say that there is no significant pressure, that there is no situation where Russia continues that, but we also exaggerate, we do not give all the truth. There is no counteroffensive there, the way it is. The operation has a different character. But a lot of statements are made in the political spectrum. This is what Ukraine does. It shows that, look, if we have enough troops, if we have enough equipment, we can counterattack and we can win. So this statement is sent more to the Western allies, Western partners. But to speak about this part of the front, it's a complex situation with several groups fighting on 2 to 3 different intersecting districts, and it's messy, yeah. Russians still continue. They have the priority there. They're still pushing. Yes, in 2 to 3 areas, Ukrainian forces prevailed, but they were counterattacked by Russians, and they had to move again. But in any case, such a counteroffensive as they're describing in Kharkov, as it was in Kharkov in 2022, we do not see that. Do we have cauldrons there? You imply where we encircled some Russians? Look, Alexei, some reporters are saying that there are 6 cauldrons where our troops have surrounded Russians. Syrsky is talking about some sort of cauldrons here at Dobropillya. On the deep state maps, you can kind of see them, sort of. Kucherov Yar, you can see that group is disconnected from the main forces. So who is surrounded? Well, look, the cauldron is also, whether it's a factual one or emotional one, right? We can come to the situation, what do you define the cauldron? It's a complex terrain. Today, a certain detachment can be surrounded from 3 sides, tomorrow only from 2 sides, and it'll be not a full encirclement, but a flank protrusion. So, not to drown in all the details of military vocabulary, I would say on the level of facts, this is a complex system of different fights, attacks and counterattacks. And Russia generally has advantage in these fights. And the main demoralizing factor from the Ukrainian side is that leadership is lying. This is very demoralizing one. Because those soldiers who know that their leadership is telling truth, they're standing to the last soldier. The moment they're starting to be lied about, their morale crumbles and they leave. There is no reason for them to do something that is not acknowledged. Alexei, I also want to touch upon a couple more segments of the front, Serebryanskoye forestry and movement towards Liman. So the fights are already near Yampol, and today Ministry of Defense of Russian Federation already announced that Zarechne was captured. Ukrainian side is not confirming that. It used to be called Kirovsk. So the front is slowly moving towards Liman, where they were recently fixing roads and spending budgetary money for beautification. And also a little bit to the south, we can see Siversk. Somewhat quiet on that side of the front, but situation is not getting easier. So what can we expect on this side of the front? And one of the clips where the Ukrainian soldier is saying that you will see that the front will collapse, but not where deep state or some other Russian source is showing. It'll collapse in some unexpected place. There'll be a big crumble, a huge jump, and a breakthrough from Russia. Can Yampol be that area? Well, potentially, Alexander, we have 4 areas like this. First one is Zaporizhzhia, if we start from the south. Orehov, Gulyapolya, roughly that area, exactly. Second one is to the north and to the depth, that's Dobropillya, to Zaporizhzhia district. And then Serebryanskoye Lesnichestvo. Well, Dnipropetrovsk, that's the area that I mentioned. Yeah, they could be there, potentially. Because we do not have enough quality troops to hold the front. Liman is affected by so-called Syrsky style of management. He put territorial defense and very weak brigades, and they're failing to hold. We do not have enough quality troops. This is the meaning why Russia is exerting pressure all across the front. That is, in the military theory, is contradicting a lot of theoretical outputs, but in this specific strategy, they actually have success. How long do you think Kupyansk is left to stay? Well, nobody can tell, but we can say that probably 2/3 of that township is already problematic, if we are being delicate, to the defense forces of Ukraine. Right, if they're drawing the gray zone towards Yubileyny. Yeah, listen, gray zone is defined by the length and the quantities of UAVs used in this area. Given that right now they can fly to 20-25 kilometers, we can say that if Russians are on the front with their UAVs, special detachments like Rubicon, they can definitely draw those 25 kilometers around the area where this detachment is located. They already can isolate this district and they can destroy the trucks up to 25 kilometers away from the front lines. This is a big problem. This is already a gray zone then. Okay, while we're still trotting around the map, since you did mention the situation near Zaporizhzhia electric nuclear power station. It is turned off at the moment. Ukraine is saying you hold the station and you guys should fix it before anything bigger breaks there. Russia is touting that and saying that no, you're destroying our attempts, our trucks trying to fix it, so you're the side to blame. Today we saw the information that situation at the nuclear station is dire, and on the weekend people are already writing about Fukushima too. How big of a game changer do you think it can be? I mean, the situation around the possible breakage of this specific industrial element, and maybe it'll get people sober. Well, look, Alexander, there is another opinion. Rather qualified Ukrainian specialists are saying that this is just hype. Do not listen to that. On diesel engines, this power station can work as long as needed. Plus, reactor supposedly is not super active, so it's much easier to hold it and contain it. So there's no situation that can lead to Fukushima. But we're not technical specialists. We can give the media a report on this situation. Both sides are definitely interested to create certain media pressure around this event. And for Russia, the station is feeding power to the whole south and occupied Crimea. For Ukraine, it also can provide a lot of energy to Dnipropetrovsk and Kryvyi Rih regions. And this factor definitely can affect the brains of poor international society that had survived Fukushima and Chernobyl. So it's an easy card to use for blackmail. Both sides are trying to use it. Who is using drones and whom, we don't know. We don't see these details. But we can say that both sides can have benefits by using that Fukushima scare. I have not seen any specific predictions that would imply the nuclear catastrophe at this station. Why the head of International Atomic Energy Agency talking about that? Because, you know, he prevents a possible catastrophe that adds to his rank, so he's got some interest in this. But if you rely on the international press, not on Ukrainian or Russian press, the word Fukushima is not mentioned anywhere. This only exists in a Russian-speaking space where sides are mutually trying to scare each other. All right, we will get back to Ukraine and its perspectives, and we'll review inner political situation with it. But I want to build a bridge here and find certain parallel with today's events in the White House when Trump was hosting Netanyahu. This was somewhat sensational. Such a huge fella as Netanyahu is apologizing in front of Qatar, and he turned to the Prime Minister of Qatar himself with apologies to Abdel Ardani, and he sent his apologies about the security service in Qatar who died as a result of an attack and promised Israel will help his family. Apologies, it is war, so things happen. But then Trump published a plan about finishing the conflict in Gaza. Not 21 points, just 20. Witkov, I think, was working on 21, but 20 were published. Conclusion of all military hostilities. Israel withdraws from Gaza. All hostages released. 72 hours are given to both sides after Israel acknowledges that they accept the agreement. After all the hostages are released back to Israel, Israel has to relieve 250 prisoners and some more, after which all the Hamas members, remaining Hamas members, have to forfeit their arms and will be amnestied, and they will be offered to leave the territory. Gaza is to be managed by a technocratic, apolitical Palestinian committee that will consist of Palestinians and international experts. US plan does not imply forced relocation of Gaza citizens. Hamas and other terrorist groups have to agree to not participate in anything relating to leadership or management of the territory. And regional partners need to provide guarantees that Hamas will follow the duties taken upon themselves as a result of this agreement. So it looks rather straightforward. Seems that those countries that acknowledge the Palestine state, there were quite a few near the General Assembly, right? They were sending somewhat similar package into their recognition, I think. Do you think it'll work? Well, Alexander, I'm very skeptical about it. On paper, it looks fantastic, but in reality, there are ravines and terrains and other things. So, thing number one, Hamas needs to return all of the hostages, and they don't. Yes, there are some efforts. Yes, both sides are trying to release hostages. Yes, both sides need to try to find peace solution because, of course, it's not beneficial for Israel to continue this warfare. It strains their relations with Trump and the White House. And Trump is one of the supporters of Israel in the United States. They don't want to put him in such a position. So Netanyahu can make the right motions for that agreement and apologize to the country that they hit without warning. Now, Israel is also trying to de-escalate the situation with Turkey regarding Syria. What will it lead to? I'm very skeptical. Maybe there'll be temporary peace treaty, but wherever they will leave Hamas, there will be Hamas flourishing again. When they talk about this new technocratic government that can rule the territory, they are closing their eyes to what really is happening in Palestine and the Gaza sector. Because Yasser Arafat was one of those converted terrorists, right? And then Hamas took over and won everything. And if not precluded from that, they would have won on the Western Bank as well. So how will this government govern with Hamas present in the territory when they maybe, rename themselves or just disband somewhat, but still all the people are there, all the forces are present. So right now, the counterfeit arms dealing and flowing into Gaza sector from Egypt, and Hamas is not expected to surrender. So Gaza was actually expecting. They had a longer strategy that the United States will intervene and will stop this war eventually. And there is a strategy of certain milestones when the war can be stopped. I don't see that plan as a strategic out of this situation. Yes, probably stop this war, maybe attempt to create another Palestine government. Okay, maybe, but I do not believe in peace in Gaza. This conflict probably for now belongs to the unsolvable conflicts. Same as in Ukraine? Yeah, same as in Ukraine. All right, so solution of that is only through capitulation and complete destruction of one side, right? Or complete wear out of both sides that they cannot fight anymore. Well, it seems to me that Trump in such a situation now that he cannot give both sides an option to leave that plan. He needs these 20 points to work. Well, maybe, but we see that his opportunities to enforce things are somewhat limited. We saw them in Russian-Ukrainian conflict. Well, he didn't have any, right? Well, there were no attempts to enforce Ukraine to do something. Well, he spoke about different things. And he argued with Zelenskyy in the White Office, in the Oval Office in the White House. But it's not working. Even if you're president of the United States, you're not an almighty character. It's difficult to stop the whole country or the president of the country who has the support of special services and a big chunk of his population. So you think the Ukrainians support this war too? Well, there's enough of Ukrainians who support it. If most of the Ukrainians did not, the war would have stopped. But the significant part still wants to fight. And Zelenskyy continues to get supportive polling in the Ukraine media. Another question how realistic is, but he definitely is seeing a lot of support. So it looks like Russia needs to conquer Ukraine, or Ukraine conquer Russia, exactly. Or wear each other out to the position where you can't stand anymore. Minister of Defense of UK, Healy, is turning today regarding the events there. There's an interesting story about the Labourist Party meeting in Liverpool. There are a lot of banners saying Liverpool is not happy for you. There's a huge protest motion there. Remove Starmer. There's a big protest against liberals in Britain, right? So our message from Liverpool today that came from Healy is that President Putin, you will not win. Start negotiating. That's your only way to peace. We'll stand with Ukraine as long as it is required. That's the Healy statement. I think I heard this statement already, as long as needed. Right? Yeah, exactly, Alexander. We heard that before, and they try to evade answering the question, where is the end, or how long exactly are you going to stay? But for now, we have to admit that Europe and the United States, indeed, both agreed to give more money and give more cargo, military cargo to Ukraine, and we can already see transport lines again beefing up, and definitely more supplies are coming. A big victory for the West that we can notice is the defeat of pro-Russian forces in Moldova. How powerful this argument is, that's another conversation, but definitely in Russia they reacted as their defeat, and in the West they reacted as their victory. Given that Russia has very good opportunities to affect Moldova, but they failed to. So the West shows that they can be in better shape and that they will be supporting Ukraine, and Zelenskyy is talking about some counteroffensive. So now it is the euphoria stage. We got money, we got arms. What will happen out of it, we will know in about, 2 to 3 months. Yes, closer to winter. But for now, they're just euphoric about it. The plan of the West is very simple. Nobody is expecting Ukraine to win Russia and to push them back to the borders of 91 and to destroy them so severely that Russia will just collapse. No, the idea is to damage Russian forces so much that mathematically they would understand that attrition is too high. We need to look for diplomatic solution. And that's where the West is trying to lead Russia to. And they're trying to support Zelenskyy in his effort to fight Russia to do that. And Zelenskyy is also playing to that. He's saying, yeah, if we stop the war, we can even do negotiations and we can do elections in Ukraine. How successful this scenario will be, we don't know. We'll see. But the idea is mathematical attrition of Russian forces. Nobody is even aspiring to break Putin's will, so they would be crying and saying, we are sorry, we were wrong, we will never do it again, this was a horrible mistake. They're just hoping, and again, that's just a blunt example. If Russia brings 100 tanks to the front a month, if we shoot 95 of them down, the remaining 5 are not going anywhere. If they bring 100 soldiers and we shoot 95 of them, the remaining 5 are not going to change anything. For now, Russian advancement is speeding up, and new means that were promised, like Tomahawks, may change the situation. We do not see the effects of it yet, but we see the growing optimism of Ukrainian leadership, with some words that will reach you even in Vladivostok, and some euphoric statements from our closest neighbors like Poland. So, Alexei, is it some schizophrenia that some people are saying that Ukrainian foreign affairs is prone to, and Sybiga specifically? Can you explain why he comes out and says that, yes, we will be hitting you everywhere, you will not be safe anywhere, Mr. Putin? And then right after that, he says that we plan to finish this war by the end of 2025. Are these mutually exclusive things? No, Alexander. They do hope that long-range strikes will be serving as the most convincing arguments for Putin's Russia to stop their war. This is their scenario that they are calculating. And I would remind that this scenario exists since 2022. Since the default of Istanbul negotiations, that scenario was on the table all the time. The problem was that Ukraine never got enough money or arms to fulfill it. So now the West is finally coming to an idea, let's try to give Ukraine as much as we can and let's see what happens. End of the first hour.